Hey guys! Sorry for the confusion for everyone who couldn't find me. I'm about to text people who couldn't find me. Everyone was blowing up my phone. They didn't know where I was. I was running a little late. I'm sorry. Sorry. Let's see. People couldn't find me. Let's see. I'm just texting people now that couldn't find me. I was running a little late. Let's see. Who else wasn't able to find me? Who else wasn't able to find me? Sorry about this, guys. I don't know. I'm just gonna start reading from here. I can't help everyone that can't find me. It's just too hard. Anyway, here we are. Becca Pava with another chapter of Saving Destiny. Again, I'm a freelance author. I'm also a professional patient. I coined that term myself. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of junk I gotta deal with. This is how I eat. And then I got a whole host of other tubes coming at me everywhere else. So it's pretty crazy. I'm a professional patient, that's for sure. I'm in and out of the hospital constantly. Really sucks. Really sucks. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't walk. I can't stand. I can't even bear weight. This machine behind me is a Hoyer lift. That's how I get in and out of my bed in my wheelchair. But writing is the way I make meaning out of life. I figure I have a short stay on Earth, but I was meant to do something. And what I was meant to do is leave this world a little better than the way I found it. And the way I do that is by writing. And breaking down stigma, breaking down barriers, showing the world the true face of mental illness, the true face of chronic illness, the true face of terminal illness. Not what the media hypes it up all to be, but the true face of what it really looks like. And I try to do that through my writing. And I also want my writing to be my legacy. I want my writing to stand for what I stand for now and last years and years past I'm gone. So, saving destiny. We'll be saving destiny. Looking for it on my phone. So we start off with the mom's perspective. When the book is published, the mom's perspective will always be in regular font, and Destiny's perspective will always be in italics. Mom. Halfway through the year, when Destiny was 12, the overdoses started. I could read it off her face when she had overdosed. Her skin would turn white with an almost bluish tint, making her little freckles stand out all the more prominently. Her normally bright blue eyes would get huge and fill up with a kind of sad pain that speared my heart, even though she would not make eye contact with me. She would stare intently at her feet. Her long, curly, dark red hair would be falling in her face, unbrushed and wild, and she would speak in a whisper. The first overdose was on 30 of her prescription Paxil. I drove her to the hospital, where they made her drink a thick, gritty slurry of activated charcoal that had her projectile vomiting for the next 2 hours and having black diarrhea for the next 2 days. They monitored her for hours. By the time psych crisis came, she was sleeping peacefully. I promised to lock up all the medication in the house, and they sent her back home with me. The next overdose was a bottle of Tylenol, then Benadryl, then aspirin. Hey guys, nice to see you guys. She would pick them up on her long bike rides and get them from friends, or sneak out at night to buy them. We put more and more rules into place to try to stop the flurry of overdoses, but she always managed to find ways around them. By then, Destiny was seeing therapist number 10. Her name was Mary, and she was supposed to specialize in treating children with PTSD. Destiny had never spoken about any specific trauma occurring at any point in her life, but when she had been at University Hospital at age 10, and the psychiatrist had told her she wanted to help her feel better, Destiny had responded to her that she couldn't feel better because she was scheduled to die. Did somebody tell you that you were scheduled to die? The psychiatrist had asked her. Destiny had nodded yes. Then returned to rocking back and forth and moaning. No one could get any further response out of her. Ever since then, Alan and I had been convinced that someone had been abusing her. We had been so convinced that we had moved from Pennsylvania to Connecticut to get Destiny away from whoever her abuser was. However, when we questioned the psychiatrist at University Hospital on whether or not she thought Destiny had been abused, she said that the psychological testing was inconclusive. Her discharge paperwork said she had a diagnosis of childhood-onset schizophrenia, but Alan and I immediately dismissed this idea as preposterous. Of course our daughter wasn't schizophrenic. That was the diagnosis homeless people living on the streets carried, not our 10-year-old daughter. About 4 months after we had started seeing Mary, Destiny overdosed on my Aunt Pat and Uncle Charlie's medicine cabinet while we were there for a visit. Several weeks before the incident, Mary told us that Destiny was claiming she heard voices. Mary explained to us that she thought Destiny was saying this as an excuse. Mary said that Destiny was trying to blame her behavior on something else other than herself, and that she probably got the idea of hearing voices from one of the older kids on the last psychiatric unit she was on. Besides, true psychosis is very rare in children. Destiny is claiming she was around 5 when she started hearing them. I doubt that a 5-year-old was actually hearing voices. She was probably hearing imaginary friends that she's mixing up with hearing voices. Mary Matt explained to us over the phone. I'm just letting you know this, because if she starts talking about the voices, you should know that they're probably just serving as an excuse for her behavior. I trusted Mary. She was a licensed therapist after all. But Destiny never brought up the topic of the voices with us at that point, so I just left the issue alone. Even though she didn't mention the voices, I did notice that Destiny, who was often quiet anyway, had shut down completely. Every time we asked her if she was okay, We were prepared for her to bring up the issue of the voices, but she never said a thing about them, just gave us a dejected shrug. That day at my Aunt Pat and Uncle Charlie's house, I had somehow been ignoring all of the warning signs. I had been paying attention to Mary, the professional, instead of Destiny, my daughter, who I should have known better than anyone else. I didn't get suspicious when she went to use the bathroom. I only started to get worried when she didn't come down for over half an hour. After being lulled into a false sense of security by the other overdoses that had always resulted in her drinking charcoal, flushing it out, and being fine, I took my time getting her to the ER. I stopped home to grab a book for myself and an extra teddy bear for Destiny, and then, on the way there, her head began to loll to the side. At first I thought she was just tired, but then she completely stopped responding to me, and I could see how slowly and unevenly her little chest was rising and falling. I floored the gas pedal and began running every red light and stop sign. When we got there and a man in a red jacket with an ID tag reading Tim approached the car, I was frantic. She took a whole bunch of medications. She's barely breathing. She won't wake up. I need to get her in there now. Tim, the valet guy, immediately radioed for help, and within seconds, medical personnel rushed out with a stretcher and yanked her out of the car, rushed her into Trauma Room 1, and nurses, aides, and doctors were swarming the whole room. They immediately cut off her clothes and loosely tossed a tiger print hospital pediatric gown haphazardly over her naked body as they slapped heart monitor leads all over her, threw a blood pressure cuff around her arm and an oxygen monitor on her finger. She's not breathing. She has no gag reflex. We're going to need to intubate. I watched in horror as one of the doctors dropped a breathing tube down her throat into her lungs and hooked it up to a bedside ventilator. Her blood pressure's tanking. We need to get a central line in her. We need an arterial line too. One of the doctors injected needles of lidocaine into her neck and chest, and then used a scalpel followed by an ultrasound machine to help guide the 3-pronged IV tubing from her neck into her heart before stitching it into place. They also inserted a urinary catheter in that arterial line, which they explained to me would monitor her crazy low blood pressure and give them readings about whether or not she was on the right ventilator settings. They hung bags and bags of IV mixtures and injected certain medications directly into one of her newly placed central line ports in her neck. No one could tell me if she was going to live or not. Hours later, they got her stabilized enough that they could bring her to the pediatric intensive care unit. I was relieved when they told me she was stabilized. I hadn't yet learned the difference between stabilized and cured. They told us she may need dialysis to get the toxins from the overdose out of her system. They told us she may need dialysis 3 times a week for the rest of her life, or may need a kidney or liver transplant. They told us she may wake up with brain damage, or not wake up at all. Alan and I sat vigil by her bed in the pediatric intensive care unit for almost 5 days before they were able to take her off life support. When she opened those brilliantly blue eyes and looked around, and we could see our daughter in them, the thick heaviness in the room dissolved into cotton candy clouds and light fresh air on a new spring day. Alan and I each leaned over the bed railings to hug her and let our tears of happiness soak her tiger gown. When we asked her why she had done it, she mumbled she had just wanted to die. The same thing she said about the other overdoses. But I knew my daughter. I knew something else was going on. Once Destiny was considered to be medically stable enough, she was transferred to Windtree Hospital's adolescent psych unit, where we got repeated phone calls of her biting herself on the arms so deeply she bled, punching the mesh wire-covered windows so hard they grated her knuckles like cheese, smashing her head against the wall when they locked her in the quiet room, trying to run off the unit every time the doors opened, screaming and crying inconsolably, and even hiding in empty drawers in her room and somehow getting the drawers to close with her in it so that they couldn't find her for over an hour. At least once or twice a day, she got so out of control that they were needing to restrain and sedate her. I've been hearing two men's voices that no one else can hear since I was a little kid, plus whispers and chatter that I can't tell apart from one voice to the next. They scream at me and tell me to do things that I don't want to do, and if I don't listen, they get louder and louder and punish me. I also sometimes see things no one else can see, like blood and cameras on the walls. Sometimes it's too hard to know what's from the bad man's reality and what's from the right reality. I hate it, Destiny tried to explain to me. When she told me this, everything all just clicked. I suddenly understood the constant freakouts starting at age 5, her inability to console herself, all of the suicide attempts, the periods where she got so distant and didn't seem to be comprehending what we were saying to her, and her fearfulness. I was terrified of losing my daughter to this mental illness monster that was attempting to swallow her whole. Alan and I requested a family meeting. We do not believe that Destiny has a real psychotic disorder. We believe that she is manufacturing symptoms to cover up her behavior as an attempt to get more attention. She states that she hears voices, but when asked about them, she shuts down and can't even tell us what they say. But I do hear them. I'm not lying, Destiny's voice was desperate. Please, she cried, you have to believe me. I'm scared and I'm not making them up. We're not going to engage in this discussion, Susan told her firmly. You believe me, right, Mom? Destiny asked me, almost pleading. I hesitated. I was so torn. On the one hand, Destiny seemed so sincere, and everything she described to me was so detailed. It was too specific to be something she had just dreamed up in her head. And her description of her experience just plain made sense. Everything made sense based on her explanations of what had been going on in her head at certain moments. On the other hand, licensed professionals who had been in the field of child psychiatry since before Destiny was born were telling me she couldn't be having those symptoms. What was I supposed to think? Please, Mom, I'm telling the truth, Destiny cried. At a loss, I just looked down. Destiny continued to see Mary when she was discharged from Windtree Hospital after being put on a medication called Seroquel to help with her mood swings and being switched from Paxil to Prozac. Initially, Destiny responded well to the med adjustment, but once she got home, she was retreating further and further into herself. I would go to her room to check in on her and find her lying in bed, curled up around Blinky, whispering inaudibly and tapping her knee over and over again. Sometimes she wouldn't even register that I'd been in to check on her. Destiny went back to Windtree Hospital, once for an overdose and once for attempting to cut off her breast with a pair of freshly sharpened quilting scissors that left a deep gash draining pus and infection. Both times, Destiny needed to be restrained and sedated multiple times. Both times they insisted that Destiny was manufacturing symptoms. Windtree Hospital also tried to convince us that Destiny had borderline personality disorder and needed to be in their residential treatment program for teens with this issue for 12 to 18 months. Alan and I knew we couldn't lock away our child for 12 to 18 months and told Susan, the social worker there, absolutely not. She looked at us like we were crazy. We compromised and decided to start Destiny in outpatient DVT instead, with therapist number 11. Destiny went through therapist number 11 to 13 over the next 2 years. She continued with her revolving door of psych hospital admissions as well. I'm afraid to come home from work, Alan told me one day when Destiny was 15. I never know if you'll be home or with Destiny in the ER or the pediatric ICU or signing her into a psych unit or, his voice broke up, or something even worse than that, he finished, unable to put into words our worst fear that remained unspoken. We eventually made the most painful decision of our lives and put Destiny on the list to get services from the Department of Mental Health to get her on a waiting list for several residential treatment programs of our choosing. Sadly, all of the programs we had to choose from were 12 to 18 months long, but we had run out of options. It was either residential treatment or lose our daughter to this monster of whatever illness it was forever. The Department of Mental Health case manager also recommended a new therapist for Destiny and an evaluation by a psychiatrist named Dr. Wallace, who was the leading child psychopharmacologist in the country and also happened to be in New York City, which was driving distance from our house in Connecticut. For the first time in years, Alan and I felt like we had a plan in place and like we were doing something productive to save our Destiny. And that's the end of chapter 2 of Saving Destiny. So, I just want to hear opinions from you guys. This book is not published yet. This book is one that I just finished, and I just finished editing it. It's ready to go to publishers. I just want to add in. Thank you, Vivian. You think I did a good job on it? Thank you. You liked it? I'm really glad you liked it. I just want to, what do you think of the character Destiny? Do you think she's a likable character, a frustrating character, an annoying character, like a lovable character, irritating character? Like, what do you think? What do you think of that character, the character of Destiny? I'm just curious what kind of character you think she is. So you like the character Destiny? What do you think of Destiny's parents? I love Destiny's parents. I think Destiny has great parents. I think they only want the best for her. I agree, Vivian. I'm glad you think she's relatable. Yeah, her parents are really caring. I really think they would do anything for her. I really think her parents would do anything for her. they'd go to the ends of the earth for her. And you'll see later in the book they really will go to the ends of the earth for her. They really stick up for her. She has a really good close-knit family. They're really good together. And you'll see her family sticks together through the whole of the book. And I think that's what makes Destiny's family so special. Can you guys relate to the book? On a personal, professional, friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, anything level? Can you relate to the book at all? Anything strike a chord? No, they're not based off my parents. The book's interesting. Thank you. The book is based off my life, but parts of it are definitely fictionalized. Like a lot of it's fictionalized. Yeah, it does say a lot about childhood onset mental illness. And I did struggle with childhood onset mental illness really badly when I was a kid. Ever since I was like 5 years old, same as Destiny. That part is my life to a T. Started at 5, got really bad at 10. Didn't let up until I was like in my early 20s. Finally got on the right meds. I was in a state hospital for 6 months and they put me on Clozaril. And Clozaril saved my life. Then I got the agranulosis side effect, agranuloptosis side effect, which is a dangerous drop in white blood cells. So they had to take me off the Clozaril, and I was terrified. But luckily, I had a really good psychiatrist who knew that loxapine is the cousin to Clozaril and works almost exactly the same. And so she switched me from Clozaril to loxapine, and I do really well on the loxapine. And I'm almost off almost all psych meds except for the loxapine and the cogentin. And those are like the only 2 psych meds I'm on anymore. But I'm on a whole lot of other medical meds. Way whole lot. A lot of them going through here. Or shots or creams or drops or lots of stuff. Hang on. Yeah, I do feel a lot better. I'm doing so much better. Oh, thanks, Vivian. Yeah. Honestly, I'd rather have physical issues than mental issues because when I was having the mental health issues, it was just a big mess. I was just miserable all the time. Now that my mental health issues have straightened out and I just have the physical health issues, I can mostly just be like, okay, I've got this going on, but I can look at the bright side and figure out how to cope with it. And it's easier for me. I feel bad for people who are still struggling with their mental health issues immensely. I feel like they have it worse off than I do. Oh yeah, I do have a lot of stuff I do, yeah. My routine's even more complicated these days. I should do another one to show how much more complicated it is these days. These days it's even crazier. But I think I'm going to end the video now. It's really nice seeing you guys, having a video with you guys. I'm going to do another one of these really soon about Chapter 3 of Saving Destiny. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. This was awesome. Alright, bye guys. Have a good night.